Chris Peaks back with Brandon Moseley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast. And for everybody's tuning in, please remember to hit that subscribe button. We're back here with Case Dixon, who is running for the GOP nomination for the 6th District. This is the third time we've had him on. Case, summer's closing out now, man. How's the campaign going?
It's going good. It's going good. I think still the main hurdle is just getting the word out there that there actually is a special election. There's still so many folks that have already voted in May and then they voted in the runoff and they know they're voting in November and they're wondering why they should be going back to the polls on the 11th. So it's really just a matter of educating folks, letting them know that there actually is a special primary.
Yeah, Case, you've been running now for nearly a year. We had the primary that wasn't back in May. What makes you think this time around is going to be better than it was, 4 months ago?
Yeah, I think, in May there were so many folks on the ballot, and it's hard for folks with jobs and with kids and with extracurricular things to really keep up with politics as closely as maybe you and I do. And so I'm hoping that given the fact you go to the polls on districts in District 6 on the 11th, that there's only going to be two people on your ballot if you ask for a Republican ballot. I'm hopeful that when people familiarize themselves with my campaign, that they might be more likely to vote for me. Now, if folks are familiar with my campaign and Gary's campaign and will decide not to vote for me, that's fine with me. My biggest thing that I have on the May 19th primary is, getting out in front of voters and there's always fundraising discrepancies, especially challenging and incumbent. And then so when you couple that with the fact that I didn't have as much name ID, that obviously hindered me on the 19th. And I think that with the August 11th special primary, we might be able to overcome a lot of that.
Okay, so along those same lines with fundraising, I'm not going to get in to ask you questions. I know I'll be able to see it next month when I look at the Secretary of State's website. But it seems like you've got a lot of money behind you now. You've got billboards coming up. I mean, is your message resonating with donors? I mean, what's going on with that?
Yeah, we've been fortunate. Some folks have reached out recently wanting to help with billboards and get things up around the district, wanting to see some change in District 6. So we've definitely been blessed with some folks that have been reaching out and wanting to help in that regard.
Case, I know you were opposed to when we went into Iran back in, what was it, January? And now we're still
February.
in Iran. Um, do you think the president made a mistake looking back on it, jumping on Iran like we did?
I don't think it was in our best interest. I don't think it was really putting America first. And then when we look back now, or then versus now, it looks like we're just trying to get back to the status quo, which was getting the strait opened up and there not being as much of the conflict as we have right now. And so if we're just trying to get back to how it was before, it begs the question, why did we start this in the first place? And so looking back, I don't think it was a good idea. I didn't think it was a good idea then, and I still don't think it's a good idea now.
Case, you've been readily available for anybody who wants to talk to you. I see you on all kind of podcasts, different radio shows. There was, I think, the Reflector wrote something on this the other day that I'm currently writing something on. Your opponent is not talking to anybody. What is he hiding?
Yeah, I think it's the classic incumbent. They don't want to acknowledge publicly that they have a challenger because then that begs the question, what's the difference? And they don't want someone that is talking about their record getting publicity, getting press. And so I just think it's a strategic move used to hopefully dampen the turnout for me on the August 11th primary.
Case, he's got a lot of publicity, data center going up in Birmingham, just north of the district. And I think another one's about to pop up in Bessemer. And I think another one is popping up in Columbiana. Senator Tuberville has said that data centers are our future with AI and all. What's your view on the data centers and the amount of power and water usage we get when we site one of these?
I would say concerning how data centers are coming up right now, I'm largely opposed. And my reasoning behind that is I am a true conservative, limited government, free market capitalist. And a lot of times you see the government is bending over backwards for these data centers in ways that they wouldn't do for other corporations, other businesses, or other individuals in regards to tax abatements and rezoning and things of that nature. And still, whenever it's public land, in some cases, rare cases, it's important that the public has a say so in how that land is used. And so I would just say, in general, I am against corporatism or corporate favoritism. And a lot of times it seems as though that's how these data centers are coming about. And then, even after that, you have to ask what are the true environmental impacts of these data centers and make sure that we're actually doing our due diligence instead of fast tracking these things without actually understanding what the repercussions are. And so, as I stated, many times it seems like the data centers are coming up with special favors and special interest groups getting a say so, as well as things being fast tracked where they shouldn't be. And so that's why I would say I'm largely opposed.
Case, your opponent uh, originally term limited himself to 5 terms, I believe. Now he's running to his seventh. He's went back on his word. What does that say about his character, and can we trust him on anything he says?
I mean, he would say that when you get to Washington, it's different than the way you thought it was going to be, and there's harder to get things accomplished, and that may be true. Now, I personally am of the thought that if you say something, you need to stick to your word, and I do think that indicates some portion of your character, if not most of your character or all of your character. But then, even so, to counter his argument, where he says, well, look what I can do. I'm in leadership now. I'm well respected. I've been here 12 years. This is what I can get accomplished. Okay, yeah, you've been there 12 years. You've been there for a long time. Let's take a look at your record and see what you have done or what you haven't done. And so I would say for someone that's been in office as long as Congressman Palmer, it's more about what you have or haven't done, not about what you can do. It goes back to that old saying, what is it? A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And so I think we're looking ahead, or it's really such a hypothetical about what can you do. I really just think that really shouldn't even be part of the answer, especially whenever voters are taking a look at a record here.
Case, we've got a Republican president in the White House. We have, Republicans in control of the House of Representatives. We have Republicans in control of the Senate. And you can do budgets through reconciliation. You have to go around the filibuster rule. Why are we still not any closer to a balanced budget than when Democrats controlled everything?
Well, everybody's got their own things that they want covered, whether it's your welfare state for the Democrats or whether it's for the military-industrial complex for a lot of Republicans. Everybody has the things that they want to see, um, receiving money, and so that's the one thing where, and there's many things actually, but that's one of the things where Republicans and Democrats actually agree is. Whenever they disagree, they just agree to spend more tax dollars on their own. They just say, look, let's just do both. And then they end up both getting their way. And so that's why we've seen the debt exploded. I mean, we're almost $40 trillion in national debt. And when I first started running, it was about 35, it was almost $36 trillion. And that was just a little over a year ago, like you said earlier. So we've already spent almost $4 trillion during Trump's first year of his presidency. So that's what's happening here, and that's really my main focus, is because I'm saying that this debt and the national debt ties into the affordability crisis that we're seeing today.
Okay, so along those same lines, have you given thoughts of how you would cut the debt? Because we're now paying more on that than we are even in defense.
Yeah, so there's several things. Number one, you have to have someone that actually is willing to say no to leadership, say no to the swamp, say no to Washington whenever they want your vote or they need your vote for whatever legislation. There's always an emergency. There's always, well, this one it must be passed, but next time we'll address the debt. Well, they use that same tactic every single time. And the folks in Washington know that, but they go home and they campaign and they say, yes, I voted for a $5 trillion debt ceiling increase because this time we had to get X, Y, and Z done. But next time there's going to be another emergency. And so step one is actually saying no, even when it's not popular, saying, look, I'm not voting for this unless you take out this debt ceiling increase or this added spending or whatever it may be. And then second, you have to have someone that is willing to make some cuts. So it starts with saying no, and then it starts with saying, hey, actually, you're going to get less money than you got last time. And so I've been very vocal. I'm a big proponent of Senator Rand Paul's 6-penny plan, where you cut 6 pennies from the dollar every year for 5 years until the budget is balanced. And the way that that's going to work is that it makes the cuts more palatable. People can see that it's coming. People can prepare. And if you were to ask folks, most people can really do with 6% less than they got the year before. It's just a matter of making it gradual and making it easier to digest. That way, these changes can be implemented over a period of time instead of all at once.
Case, Congressman Thomas Massey um, opposed the administration and the Republican majority on a number of key, not routinely, but on a number of key votes. He opposed what the Republicans were doing, and they basically steamrolled him out of Congress. Marjorie Taylor Greene said some comments and had a couple votes that were questionable and was sort of forced out of Congress. Are you concerned that if you're elected and then you try to take a stand that, the whole force of the GOP is going to come crashing down on top of your head?
That's certainly possible, but you can still go about things strategically and tactfully. But that is an inherent risk that I'm okay taking, and that I really feel like I have to take, because going back to the spending and the affordability, I really do feel like my future and the future of my kids is at stake. And so, yes, that's a risk, and yes, that could happen, but it's a risk that has to be taken in my eyes.
Case, if we came down to a vote where we had to raise the debt ceiling and it went against something that you opposed, would you be willing to shut the government down and take the lumps for the short term in order to get the results in the long term?
Yeah, and it's no doubt that especially because, like I talked about, the cuts have to be gradual. They can't be overnight. And so we are still going to have to raise the debt ceiling, but I think it should be more short term, say 500 billion at a time, not $5 trillion at a time. That way, whenever the government comes back and asks for more money and says, hey, we're almost at the debt ceiling, you only gave us 500 billion to work within here. We need more. We need to raise it again. We can look back and say, okay, what changes and what measures have been taken that are actually going to start reducing this debt and reducing this deficit. And so that way we can actually revisit it several times. And so it's not that I want the government to shut down. I think it's that we just don't need to raise the debt ceiling for as long a period of time and give the government really the ability to spend on no leash. They need to be on a short leash every single time to make sure that we're actually getting done conservative legislation that's going to reduce this debt and deficit.
Case, we've had a lot of local communities in the news with their flock cameras, maybe being abused a little bit. But crime has dropped. What's your view on, having, video cameras on and block cameras, reading license plates, and drones with both kinds of cameras? I mean, if surveillance makes us safer and fights crime, and crime has plummeted, where do you come out on that?
Yeah, I would say, again, largely opposed to the flock cameras. I think there's obviously some constitutional concerns there regarding our Fourth Amendment rights, depending on how it's used and how it's implemented and who's gathering this data. But then also, too, I just think the risk for abuse is too high. And so even if you were to find a way around some of the constitutional arguments, it's like you said, we've already seen folks abusing these things. And so I think with freedom and liberty, there is an inherent risk involved. You can't have a totalitarian regime where there's no crime, but also have freedom and liberty. They can't coexist. And so you can go to some of these countries where they have these whatever type of government setup, and there's no crime, but there's also no freedom. And I don't want to live in a country like that, and I don't want my kids to live in a country like that. So again, there's just an inherent risk that I think you take with freedom and with liberty.
Hey, so on the same lines, we have a Republican president, we have a Republican majority in the House and the Senate, but it seems like the debt keeps going up. We keep losing these liberties. Are these really conservatives that we have in office, or are they just Republicans in name only?
I mean, largely speaking, instead of going into specifics about specific people, I would say largely conservatives are not in control. And it's important that we realize that, because I think that we have been co-opted to think that we are. And so we just rubber stamp things that are coming across our desk and think, oh, yeah, that's conservative because a quote conservative is pushing this, where we need to actually look at the legislation, see, is it fiscally conservative? Is it socially conservative? Is it truly moving forward with conservative policies? And if we look at it piece by piece, many times that's not the case.
Case, when President Trump was elected, he said that he would get a deal between Ukraine and Russia to end this war, which we pumped, hundreds of billions of dollars into. I think President Trump tried, and we had the Alaska summit, but it doesn't seem like any of that worked. And they're still head to head. We're still backing Ukraine with our dollars and our technology. Is this just going to go on for another 3 or 4 or 5 years? Or, is there need to be some sort of change in U.S. policy on this?
Yeah, there certainly needs to be a change in U.S. policy concerning all foreign aid, really, which is I'm opposed to, whether it's munitions, whether it's money. I mean, it doesn't matter. We've got issues that we have to focus on here in America. And so in regards to the war, I think that Putin called President Trump's bluff, and here we are. What are we going to do about it? And I really just think it's none of our concern. I think we need to move away from the Middle East, move away from the war with Ukraine and Russia, move away from a lot of the things that we're doing overseas, and spend our time and energy truly focusing on the affordability, healthcare, housing prices, things like that, things that are actually going to affect the lives of American citizens, instead of wasting taxpayer dollars and never coming to a solution in regards to these foreign entanglements.
Hey, Steve, war powers goes with Congress. And since Jefferson and the Barbary Wars, we've seen presidents take on more of a role with that. Do you think that we should, if we're going to go to fight Iran or whoever, we should make a declaration of war?
Yeah, I mean, no matter what, if there is a war that's going to take place, let's just say someone's attacking us, or we have real credible, reliable information that someone is going to attack us. That's where I think the president has the authority as the commander in chief to move forward and to deter those attacks from taking place, or to go on defense there. But if we just say, hey, we don't like what so-and-so country is doing, we want to go to war with them, that's where Congress comes into play. Now, it's unfortunate that a lot of times Congress does not truly represent the will of the people, but this is the country that we live in. We elect representatives. They are supposed to be doing our will, and that's why it's important that they have a say-so in regards to whether or not we do go to war, because the representatives are supposed to be the people's voice. And so if there's an appetite for an offensive war, then ideally, we'll have representatives that truly represent their constituents and are voting whether or not to go to war. But I do think that power lies with Congress. And if I was elected and I was in Congress and it came before us, I would be voting no, because there's so many issues here that, like I said, that we need to be focusing on instead of all these other things, hundreds and thousands of miles away overseas.
Case, if Iran develops and uses a nuclear weapon, doesn't that trump any of the bullcrap we've got going on here in the country? And you're looking at a much larger war where we have to physically invade that country or use nuclear weapons ourselves in response. Um, wouldn't it be better to fight a small war that's like more of an air war, naval war now than, that worst case scenario that I just described later?
Well, let's play out your case scenario. Are you talking about Iran uses a nuclear weapon on the U.S. or on a neighboring country?
Let's say they nuke Israel.
Okay.
What is our response to that?
Yeah, so Israel, as far as my understanding, has very reliable information and very reliable intel. That's more of their problem in the sense that if they get information that Iran is actually going to bomb them, then they need to take care of that in the way that they best see fit. They've got different priorities than we do here in our country, and so they can do what they feel like is necessary. But the problem is whenever we've been saying Iran is developing a nuclear bomb or they're about to use a nuclear bomb since the 80s, it begs the question, is this really true information or is this just some sort of narrative to be fed to people so that we can keep the endless money printing and continue these forever wars for the benefit of the higher powers that be?
But if Iran was not developing a nuclear weapon, then why wouldn't they just agree not to develop nuclear weapons, which is what the president's been trying to get them to do?
Well, because then all their cards are on the table. I mean, I can't speak for Iran specifically, but I mean, they're a sovereign nation as well. And I'm sure that they want to deter. I mean, if they just said, hey, we're not going to develop any nuclear weapons and we're not going to do X, Y, and Z, I could see a scenario where another country decides to come in and invade and take over or do whatever that they want to do, knowing that Iran doesn't have a nuclear bomb. I mean, it's the same reason why, folks don't attack us or other neighboring countries because there is the threat that we might retaliate or we might be able to retaliate versus if we just announce to the world, hey, we have no weapons or we have no nuclear bomb, I think that would put our country at risk. And I think that the leaders in Iran are probably thinking the same thing. And so they want to keep all their cards to themselves, hold it close to the chest in order for the safety and the sovereignty of their own nation.
Okay, under the Biden administration, I forgot what the number was, 14, 15% interest or whatever. And President Trump came back into office, promising to lower prices on day one. We've seen prices go up. Gas is $4 a gallon now, and we see a rise with Democratic socialists taking over. How do we stop that and convince them that, hey, conservative is the way to go? Because it seems like these socialists are taking more and more of a power in our country.
Yeah, I think the important thing there is that we actually push true conservative legislation. Whenever we have conservatives in charge, but we're pushing forward with corporatism or corporate favoritism or whatever you want to say, or we're not actually following through with promises maybe that were promised in previous years, I think the younger generations are going to say, oh, this conservative stuff, this Republican stuff, it's not worth it. It's not working. But the problem is that we're not actually pursuing it. And so I think that the way to solve that problem is to actually put forward true conservative legislation, and then people will see that it does work.
Case, you're in the healthcare sector. I think you're aware that the largest payer of healthcare, from whatever program is the federal government. And that's been the biggest driver of the debt ever since, real, you could say Obamacare, but you really could go all the way back to George W. Bush's paying for medicine for seniors, which is cool. Part D Medicare was cool, but it wasn't paid for. How do we get our spending under control without telling a whole bunch of U.S. citizens, hey, you're going to pay for your own health care now?
Right, right. Well, I think obviously you hit the low-hanging fruit first, but then, like you said, there's not enough to cut there. I think it's just obvious if you look at the numbers, and I think there's some to be cut on defense as well. But then, even still, the largest drivers of our spending is going to be entitlements, and so I think that the unfortunate thing is that look, we've got folks that have paid into this for years and years and years, and now they're retired and they're pulling Medicare and they're pulling Social Security. But I do think there has to be some true structural changes that happen gradually over time, whether that be raising the retirement age is probably going to be the most palatable thing. Now, again, a lot of folks, they don't like that. But look, if we don't make structural changes, there won't be these programs by 2032. And so if I came to you and I said, hey, in X amount of years, you can have nothing at all, or you can have a slightly reduced payout that you knew was coming years in advance, what would you rather pick? You're going to pick the one with a slightly less payout that you could prepare for it than having nothing at all, because right now we are headed for nothing at all. And so if a politician stands in front of seniors and says, hey, I'm going to protect all the Social Security and the Medicare and the Medicaid, and we're not going to do a thing, everything's going to stay exactly the way it is, they're just lying to you, and they don't actually care about protecting it. They just want to get in power and be elected for that short period of time. Versus when someone comes along and says, hey, this really stinks, but we're going to have to make some structural changes. That way it truly is there for you, and you are able to get back some of what you paid out, or what you paid in. That person is telling you the truth. And that's what I'm trying to tell people.
I think I have a tough question for you. You just said entitlement. How can you go to somebody who's been paying in for Social Security and Medicare for 50 years and say that's entitlement when that's their money they're putting into that?
Yeah, I mean, I use that phrase. I mean, that look, I understand folks have paid into this, and take for example my parents. They're not quite retired, but they paid into Social Security their whole life. But they have next to no confidence that it's actually going to be there whenever they do want to retire, or for the life of their retirement. And so, yes, these were bad ideas to start with. We should have let people keep their money in their pocket, invest it how they want to, buy their health care the way they want to. That was the solution. And now the president that put forward a lot of these policies, they were not conservatives, and they were not pushing forward with conservative legislation. And so that's why we're in the mess that we're in now. So now we have to look at, okay, what is the best way moving forward to where people do actually get their money, or get some of their money out, and that way they're actually able to retire and have something to their name instead of running out of money in 2032.
Case, infrastructure has been a big subject in the state of Alabama. I think they want to build a super bridge from Baldwin to Mobile County down there in District 1. Um, Bunch of the districts have been talking about six laning I-65 from Mobile all the way to the Tennessee line. Um, Given the debt, can we afford these high dollar infrastructure projects that it seems like even Republicans support?
Yeah, I'd have to look at those specific projects, but it goes back to what I said earlier. It's not going to happen overnight, and there are some things that are going to have to move forward that are expensive. Now, you would want to see, a lot of times these governments, whether it be the state and federal government working together to be able to make things as cheap as possible, or figure out what's the best thing to do at this time. Maybe you don't do everything all at once, but I can't speak specifically on those projects. But like I can say, it's not like overnight we're going to say we're not spending any more money. We still have obligations. We still have things we have to spend, but it is important that we start working this down over time, lowering the debt ceiling, and actually bringing the spending down. Because right now we're sitting at Biden's spending levels plus some. And this is a Republican Congress. And this is the appropriations that we just passed. We said, look, I'll take you Biden's COVID spending levels and I'll do you one. So we have to start moving in reverse in regards to these things. And it's going to be gradual.
Case, we've had you for 30 minutes. We've had you with some tough questions. You did a great job of answering them. I don't want to take up any more time because I know you've got, a family and you're probably campaigning out there. Is there anything else you would like to add before we let you go? Or Brandon, do you have any more questions?
Oh, I can always ask more questions, but no, we have been on for over 30 minutes.
Well, as far as anything to add, I would just say, look, go vote August 11th. Visit my website, dixon4uscongress.com. If I've said anything that you agree with, or you feel like I'm the candidate for you, please consider making a donation. That helps us reach more voters. And yeah, I appreciate your support.
Case, good luck next Tuesday.
Thanks for being on, Case.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all. Absolutely. Thank you.